And the movie really is what revamped the
Sure.
interest in the Doors.
But you remember
I
even
hate to admit it.
drugs versus spirituality.
In the 60s, drugs were spirituality.
I'm surprised, did anyone call you to join their band?
No.
I mean, you wrote a lot of big hit songs. You think somebody would have called you?
I think people were kind of scared, maybe, you know.
Scared of you? LA can make you crazy. Has LA made you crazy, Robbie?
No.
You're still doing all right.
I grew up here.
Yeah, right.
So.
Okay, let's start here.
Okay.
New album?
Right.
Robby Krieger and the Soul Savages?
Yeah.
Now, it's all instrumental?
Yeah.
Is it like a Booker T in the MGs? Are you trying to bring back kind of the instrumental
Yeah,
feel?
that's my hope is to have an instrumental hit like Booker T.
Yeah.
In fact,
my had so many great, was it Soul Hugger or it was Green Onions?
Hip Hugger.
Hip Huggers, thank you. Yeah.
Green Onions.
Did you like that music? Did you like Stax?
Yeah. I mean, and that's not what I'm trying to do, but I'm just saying in general to have a...
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it sounds like that.
Yeah, to bring back the instrumental hit record type of deal. It's fun.
And then, of course, I read this book when it came out, so it's great to talk to you about some of the stuff in the book. Set the Night on Fire.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed this book a lot. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
So let's start with the Soul Savages thing.
Okay.
I saw a funny thing where you said Robby Krieger and the Soul Savages is a stupid name. But then I also saw where you said the Doors was a stupid name too.
Right, exactly. And
so what should the Soul Savages be called?
And so was the Butts Band.
Right.
You ever hear about the Butts
Band?
I
think I read about it in this wonderful book of yours.
Yeah. What would I rather have called?
Yeah.
That was the one we picked.
Right.
Marco is great at names, so he made up about 100 names.
Okay.
And we whittled it down from...
Was it a democratic vote?
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be because it's called Robby Krieger first, you see.
I know, and I didn't want that.
You should have pulled rank.
I really didn't want it to be Robby Krieger. Yeah, I wanted it to be more like a real group type thing. But, they said, oh, well, you get more airplay or something.
Right.
People love the Doors and all that. But then they're going to think it's going to sound like the Doors.
Yeah.
So
I thought your guitar playing sounded great. Great tones.
Oh, thanks.
Are you playing an SG or?
Yep, still playing the SG.
Yeah. I remember I've seen a bunch of the videos that you posted. Did you? Your original got lost, right? Or somebody stole it? Or?
Right. Yeah, stolen.
Surprised it hasn't surfaced. I'm sure you've seen some of those things where people are finding Paul McCartney's guitar, and I can't believe somebody hasn't found your SG.
I know. I think it must be just sitting somewhere in an attic.
You probably don't know this story, but somebody stole my guitar from a gig in Detroit in 1992, and it was gone for 27 years, and I got it back.
Really?
Somebody showed up with it.
How did you get it back?
This gentleman contacted me and said, I think I have your guitar, and I'd heard this before. So I was very skeptical, and he sent, obviously, new digital photos of my guitar, and there were certain markings that only I would recognize, and I knew right away it was my guitar, and I thought, this just can't be.
Oh, wow.
And the story I was told was somebody bought it at a garage sale, and it was hung on somebody's wall, and eventually they came into the basement, and they saw it, and they said, that's Billy Corgan's missing guitar, and I don't really believe the story, but all I know is I got my guitar back.
What kind was it?
A 70s Strat. Had a very distinctive sound. When you have a guitar, like that guitar was your guitar, right?
Yeah.
And like that thing had a certain cut this way and it sounded good in this key.
Sure.
So when you lose that and you go looking for the other guitar and it never quite gets the same thing, it's such a painful process.
Luckily my guitar wasn't that great. I mean, it was just it sounded like any other, it wasn't even an SG, it was a
Les Paul Jr. Special?
Junior, I think.
Yeah.
It had the black pickups,
Mm-hmm.
And, I did the first 2 albums with that guitar.
Okay.
so it sounded pretty good.
Yeah.
But when somebody stole it, I was kind of happy because, oh boy, I can get something else now.
Well, I
So
hope they find it. I would buy that guitar if it was.
Yeah, we thought we found it a couple of months ago, but it turned out it was not it.
Right.
But now I've got a guy, my friend Jerry, and he's using those tuning forks or whatever they call them.
Sure, dowsing rods?
Dowsing rods. And he claims that it's here in L.A. somewhere.
Wow.
So we're still looking.
Okay, so if The Doors was a stupid name, what would have been a better name?
Better name than The Doors? That's a good question. I don't know.
Right?
I mean,
so was the name Jim's idea, or was it somebody else?
Yeah, it was Jim's idea.
Yeah. Do you guys have a vote on that one?
No, in fact, they had named it before I was even in the band.
Oh, okay.
So I had no.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah. Yep. I was the last one to be inducted into the band.
Sure.
So
fun fact, I was with Linda Ramone, who was Johnny Ramone's widow of the Ramones. And she said, you're the only person the Ramones ever invited on stage. Ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You're the only person who played with the Ramones that wasn't in the Ramones ever. And she showed me the clip of you guys playing a Doors song.
Yeah, I remember.
Take It As It Comes, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. And that was so weird because nobody ever plays that song.
Yeah.
As, you know, when you go up, hey, let's do a Doors song.
Yeah, Roadhouse Blues.
Yeah, it's always Light My Fire, Roadhouse Blues, Love Me Two Times. But that was crazy.
Well, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Got your punk bona fides there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a strange way to jump into this, but I'm fascinated because obviously, you know, Doors mythology is, you have the movie, you have the book, you know, and what I loved about your book, holding it up again, is, and you say it very early in the book, I'm just going to tell the story as I experienced it. Like, I'm really not into the whole mythological part of this whole thing. I'm just going to talk about the person that I knew and my experience with these other guys.
Yeah.
I love that. And I really, if you're a Doors fan, and I'm a huge Doors fan, it's a real, you feel like you're in the room without all the extra junk on top of it. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Because, you know, my band's 36 years and going, not continuously, but, and for you, it's been how many years?
50.
We remember what it was like to be in the
60.
living room practicing, you know what I mean? Not the magazine cover part, you know, arguing over hamburger and fries and stuff. It's a different experience when you're in the band as opposed to what people think the band was. And your band particularly probably has more mythology around it than just about any other band ever. And you talk about that. And so does John Densmore in his book. He talks about sort of the rays puffing up the mythology of the band.
Yeah, both of their books were kind of, they kind of each put each other down for various reasons.
Well, that's the other part about being a band is you love and maybe don't love each other, you know.
Exactly.
But this is an interesting way to get into it because obviously it's been a long time. So I looked up the date that Jim passed. It was July 3rd, 1971. So if you want, I found myself thinking, what did it feel like on July 4th, 1971? Did you guys have a meeting? How did you even kind of begin to grapple with what was going on?
Well, when we heard that he was gone, we didn't believe it, for one thing, because, you know, there was always rumors about, you know, Paul is dead and blah, blah, blah. So we sent our manager, Bill Siddons, over to France, to Paris, to, you know, to check it out. And unfortunately, he never saw the body. So, you know, we were still thinking, gee, maybe he really is just trying to fool everybody. You know? Yeah. But after a while, it sunk in, and
The reason I ask is not to be morbid. It's because you guys made the decision to carry on, and you did 2 more albums.
Right.
So I'm more interested in that, which is like, hey, what do we do? We're a great band. You know, we've had all this success, and you guys were a great band. I mean, the way you 3 played together was legendary, and still.
Yeah, we were. I mean, you know. So what happened is when Jim had gone to Paris, we had continued to practice and play almost, you know, every day.
Yeah.
And we had come up with a whole bunch of new songs that, you know, were going to be on the next album.
Right.
And if Jim liked them.
Right.
And so, you know, Elektra Records, Jack Holzman, he was really cool about the whole thing, and he says, well, why don't you guys, you know, put out another record? You know, everybody's going to miss Jim and everything, but, you know, in our contract we had 2 more albums to go.
Okay.
So he says, yeah, let's do them. You know, let's keep it going. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you have any reservations? You felt like, yeah, let's just keep going.
We did have reservations. You know, I mean, you know, it's like the Stones are going on without Mick Jagger or something like that, and maybe it was a stupid idea. I don't know. But I really love some of those songs that are on those albums.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think
it was worth.
You know, what struck me in thinking about it this morning, because I knew I was going to interview you, is these days you see bands carry on with different lead singers, and the public has kind of gotten used to it. Like if it had happened to you today, if you were in that exact situation today, I think people would have said, yeah, you should carry on. Now, obviously, there would be some people don't, but even a famous band like Linkin Park, their lead singer passed away, Chester, who was a great lead singer, and Linkin Park just came back with a new singer, a female. It's quite good. But I'm saying is the world seems to have, for lack of a better way to put it, matured with the idea that if people still want to hear the music, it's better to hear the music and not get caught up in necessarily the personality part of it all.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And, you know, Journey is a stadium band with a singer that they found on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
That worked out pretty
And I know you guys did tour like with Ian Astbury, who's somebody I'm very fond of, but like, I think the environment for you would be much more receptive now, where back then I think it was probably more harsh, like band's over, right?
I mean, you know, even then when Ray and I decided to keep touring, it was pretty well received, you know. It was pretty damn cool. I just wish John had come along, but he didn't want to.
Right.
And
you're talking about later when you guys were touring, yeah.
This was like...
But back to this time, okay, so first show, 3 shows in, you know, you guys are totally tweaked as a 4-piece. And one of my things about you as a fan is you're one of those rare bands where the 4 elements together are really, it's the sort of a magical thing that happens when you guys play. And I've listened to countless live recordings. I don't think I've ever heard you guys do a bad gig, and I'm sure I missed a few, but, and I'm not trying to be a fanboy, I'm saying is you guys were really a great live band. So now you got one missing element. How was that internally? How did it feel? And then how was the crowd with you?
The crowd was great. You know, they were very cool. Nobody saying, "Hey, where's Jim?"
Really?
No,
wow.
None of that. And you know, so Ray and I were left to be the singers.
Right. Who's the better singer? You were Ray. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I think Ray was better, probably. But and then we had this other guy, Bobby Ray, who was rhythm guitar player and singer, and he sang a few of the songs. He was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was, after the 2 albums, we decided, hey, maybe we should find a singer.
Okay.
So we talked about Paul McCartney, of course, and Bob Dylan, and
I saw Iggy Pop somewhere.
Iggy Pop, yeah. But then for some reason, we decided to go to Europe. Let's go to Europe and find somebody over there. You know, that'll be different.
Sounds very 70s. Like,
Yeah,
let's go to Europe and find a singer.
So we did. We went over there, pretty much moved our whole families over there to London. And we were, trying this guy, that guy. We didn't really get very far, and before Ray kind of blew the whole thing off.
Really?
Yeah, because Dorothy was pregnant, and she was not doing too well, and she was, mentally, sometimes when you're pregnant, you go crazy.
My wife is currently pregnant, so I empathize.
Well, so at that point, it was, okay, the Doors are over. And we, John and I were kind of pissed because, we thought we still had some good stuff in us,
How old are you at this point? Like
25-ish.
It's a little young to have to decide it's over.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think we could have been like a jazz trio, because, the whole idea to going over there was to find another singer, but we never really got close to finding a singer, really. So,
were you hoping to find somebody that had their own thing, and then that would become additive? Like, you weren't trying to necessarily recreate as much as sort of innovate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And when you say that about a jazz trio, what's interesting is the musical language of the Doors was so unique, I can actually kind of hear it. You know what I mean? Where most bands I would think, well, where does that go? But with you guys, I could see where something would come of it.
Sure. And, yeah, and some of those songs, like I say, on the 2 albums were pretty damn good.
Right. So you find yourself, okay, 25-ish, band's done. Well, what do you say to your wife? You know what I mean? Like where are we going? Or did you take a year off? I mean, what did you?
Well, we stayed in London, and John and I decided to form another band.
Okay.
So we came across this guy, Jess Roden. He was one of the guys lined up to maybe be in the Doors, and he was pretty cool. He had some really nice, good songs, and he was really into reggae, which John and I were getting into. And he happened to know this guy, Phil Chen, who was probably the best bass player in London at the time. He was a session guy. He had come from Jamaica, and, with the reggae group, I forgot the name of it, but they were, pretty big-time reggae band. And they kind of broke up, and then he decided to stay in London and be a session guy. So Jess Roden was buddies with him, so we decided to try him out, and it was great. He was the perfect bass player for our new band. And so we made an album. And
what was that called? Sorry, what was the band?
The Butts Band.
That was the Butts Band. Okay. I thought that came later.
Talk about a bad name.
Well, not to look backwards, but it might have stifled your commercial upside there.
I mean, in
Okay.
in England, that
If
didn't mean what it means here, really.
but right, but if this is a bad name and the Doors is a bad name, I think the Butts wins the bad name.
Anyway, we decided to make an album, and then we got Bruce Botnick to come over to England,
Yeah.
and which he was happy to do, and we started the album at Dynamic. No, what's the name of that studio over there where everybody goes?
Well, there was Island back in the day. There was EMI.
Yeah, it
Olympic.
was Olympic.
See,
Yeah.
I get there eventually.
Good. Olympic studio. So we did half of it there, and then we decided to go to Jamaica because Phil was from Jamaica, and he really hadn't seen his family for a long time, and he was so happy to go back there. And Chris Blackwell became friends with us, and he had this great house up there called Strawberry Fields, I think.
Right.
Or Strawberry, yeah, I think it was Strawberry Field. And so he let us stay there, and we recorded the rest of the album at Dynamic Studios, and which was really cool because all these reggae guys were recording there. Jimmy Cliff, who didn't have much interest in us.
Right.
But he was okay. He was a nice guy.
Right.
But Phil had a great time.
So, were you thinking, I still have a future in commercial music, or I just want to be a musician and make a living? I mean, where was your... I mean, you're coming off a pretty big high of success. That's pretty rare. I mean, most people don't... As you know, most people might have one album, 2 albums. I mean, you guys had 5, 6 albums that all had hits, all had classics.
Yeah. No, I mean, as far as I was concerned, and probably John too, we were going to stick with it. And,
right.
And have another band and prove that it wasn't just luck.
Sure.
To have a Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
And so what happened was after we finished the album in Jamaica, they all came, the English guys came to stay in L.A. And we decided, we tried to launch the band from L.A. And it didn't really work out very well. So the first thing that went wrong was we were on Elektra Records, and who was the guy that was the president of Elektra?
Jack Holtzman?
No, the one after him.
Okay.
He was a really not likable guy sometimes.
But is it like a famous name?
Yeah.
A famous shark.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he listens to the album, and we really had fun doing this album, and had Bruce Botnick, who's a great engineer.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so this guy listens to it, and he goes, I think you should redo the album with Tom Dowd. And stupidly, we should have done it just to do something with Tom Dowd would have been cool.
Yeah.
But I just got all pissed off, and I had this horrible look on my face, I guess, because the guy says, "Wow, I guess you don't like that idea. You've got all the excitement of a half-dead worm." So when I told that to Phil Chen, from then on, he called me the Worm.
Yeah.
So that was my nickname from then on. So we said, that let's just we'll go somewhere else. So we went and met with Bob Krasnow. You know who he is?
Of course, yeah.
So he had what was his band company called?
Was he with Columbia or?
Blue Note.
Okay.
He took over Blue Note, and yeah, he had a lot of great people on there on that record.
Was anybody pushing it back in America against the band name?
No.
Really? I found that
didn't seem to bother them.
they hated my band name.
Really?
Oh yeah, they tried to get us to change our band name 50 times.
It's not that bad.
It worked out.
Yeah. So you guys just refused to change, right?
Yes, sir.
Good for you. Yeah.
It's not so much that I love the band name. It's that people always remembered the band name. It was one of those weird names. If you said it once, no one ever forgot it.
Sure.
It had a kind of a lucky thing to it where if you just heard it, I would see people 6 months later and they would know the name of the band. It was just, it's good marketing. It's just like it's stuck.
Right.
But back to you. So the launch goes not so good.
Yeah. So we had this. We had our manager Bill Siddons, who had managed the Doors for the past year or so. Originally, he was our roadie.
Right.
And for one reason or another, he couldn't get much lined up.
Yeah.
For at least not enough. So the English guys got all bored and stuff, and they decided to go back to England.
Ah.
So John and I stupidly reformed the Buffs band, which and there's really still some good stuff on that second album. We had this guy Michael Stahl, who was the singer. He was actually a really good singer, and we found this bass player Carl Rucker, who is called Slick, and he was a really good bass player.
Right.
And then we had this girl keyboard player, Alex Richmond, and so we did a couple of minor tours with that band, and it didn't really go anywhere.
Right.
So that was it. John decided to become an actor.
Okay.
And
of course, he won a bunch of Academy Awards. And
and
sorry, with all due respect to John, I had that happen in my band. I had a band member quit and become an actor. So
really?
I'm a little salty about the whole idea. It's like, because I said to this person, have you ever acted before? And the person said, no.
Who was that?
But now I'm going to be an actor, you know what I mean? So,
who was that?
That was the female bass player in the original band. She just announced somewhere in the end of the 90s that she was going to be an actor, even though she'd never acted.
Well, I guess
somehow Mickey Rourke's connected to that story, but we'll tell that story for another day.
Okay. Last time
so
I saw
he's an actor.
Yeah.
Ray is doing like Carmina Burana or whatever. Ray. He was doing
he did X. He produced.
Oh, that's
X.
right. That's right.
Yeah. So
but remember, he did that album where it was like about a dung beetle pushing it across the universe or something. It's right. It's so behind the music. It's like this guy quits to be an actor. This guy's doing the musical about the dung beetle.
And so I just started doing instrumental albums.
Yeah.
And
can I stop you there because I'm always curious because everybody likes this part of the story, the shiny, when you were on Ed Sullivan and all this type of stuff. I'm just as interested because I've experienced it myself when, especially in this town in Los Angeles, like, did you see people treating you differently? Were people, your friends no longer your friends? Did you go through that whole weirdness?
Not really. I mean, people that were my friends were mostly not really because of the Doors,
Mm-hmm.
It was, because I was a golfer, so I had a lot of golfing friends, and that didn't really bother me. In fact, I just kind of shut off the Doors. I said, okay, that's over.
Right.
I'm never going to have that type of
Were
thing
you
again.
sentimental about it? Were you like, hey, that was amazing, and now I just got to go on to something else? Like, because that's a curious thing. You know, not many people experience your success.
Yeah.
And then,
true.
like, one day you wake up and your band isn't your band anymore. You soldier on. You find yourself in this unique situation. You're in your mid-20s.
Right.
You know, it's an interesting perspective, and I guess I'm taking it more like a spiritual point. You know, like life presents us with really unique challenges.
Right.
You've always struck me as a pretty down-to-earth person. So you're saying my friends were my friends. That makes sense to me. You know, you weren't necessarily caught up in the LA bull.
Right, exactly.
So you lean back into what you knew, which is...
Yeah, and back then it really wasn't like today. If you're, you know, in a band and you're known, you know, people go and play in other bands and
Sure.
do all that. It wasn't really like that back then.
I'm surprised. Did anyone call you to join their band?
No, not really. I think people.
I mean, you wrote a lot of big hit songs. You think somebody would have called you?
I think people were kind of scared, maybe. You know.
Scared of you?
Doors are so weird, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how I saw it. I did go out and tour with Eric Burden and some stuff like that. But you know.
I mean, you know, we all look back on our 20s and we realize we're in a sort of a particular type of prime.
Yeah, and then you know I had a kid. We had a family and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I know you've been with your wife since 1972.
50 years. 50
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of it, though, right? You lean back on your relationship, your family, your...
Yeah. And so I would say, what were we talking about?
Well, no, it's just the idea of, you know, America likes its shiny stuff, but I'm just as interested in the stuff that affects us as musicians, right? Like, we both had the experience of a lot of success, and then that success casts a particular shadow. And what you do with that shadow is, like in your case, you've always just played music.
Yeah.
You could have quit. You could have started, you know, an aquarium, you know?
Yeah, I mean, my deal was to always get better.
Right.
As a guitar player.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes it took a wrong turn here and there, I would say. But I think if you get this album, you'll see where I'm at now.
This album, yeah. Well, what's
and
amazing,
I think I've improved as a musician.
Yeah, your playing is as strong as ever, and it's definitely you playing.
Yeah, I think
only you play like you, which is...
would recognize my
well, that's what I'm saying. As a fellow guitar player, that's the greatest compliment. It's like, when I listen to this, it's you playing. I can tell it's you. Your
cool.
voice is in the chords and the notes and even the way you hit the pick, you know?
Yeah, well, you're the same way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Exactly.
Okay, let's jump into the deep end of the pool, which is this incredible Doors mythology, right? So 1978, you release American Prayer, which was Jim's recordings, mostly of poetry, and then you musical backing. And
right. And, you know, he had recorded this poetry about an hour's worth.
On a birthday, right?
Yeah, it's his last birthday. And
God bless, right?
Yeah. And he had planned on having music with it, but he wanted what do you call, kind of
free jazz? Or?
No, not jazz at all, but more like classical.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever heard of Fred Myrow?
No.
Well, I think he's still around. He was the guy that Jim wanted to.
Oh, okay.
And I don't even know if he ever got around to doing any of it, but that never happened. and luckily Jim had put the poetry down on tape. And about 10 years later, John Haney, who was the engineer who did that, I ran into him, and I said, "Hey, whatever happened with that poetry thing?"
Yeah.
And so he played it for me.
So you didn't even know it existed? Oh, okay.
I knew it existed,
oh, okay.
but I didn't know what the hell was going on with it.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know why we never asked about it before. But anyway, so he plays it for me, and I just said, "Wow, we could put music to this, and it would be cool."
Yeah.
And really, it came out as it's really one of my favorite Doors albums.
Yeah.
Really.
And
we actually play some of the songs from it today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably don't know this, but when you guys put out the box set around 2000 or so, remember you did that?
Which one?
It was like a 4 CD box set.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was called, the Doors Unlocked or something. Anyway, I knew Ray a little bit, so I sent Ray a message because I loved the box set. And what I loved about it wasn't just, here's the best songs and a couple unreleased tracks. It was like a live cut, Jim doing poetry live, you guys jamming, rehearsal tape. Then it was a really interesting, and what I wrote Ray in the note was I was like, I love that as a Doors fan, I thought I knew the band, but when I listen to this, now I understand how you guys see the band. Oh. Does it make sense to you, the way I'm saying it to you?
Yeah.
It's like, this is the band you were actually in, not my version of the band as a fan. This is how the Doors saw the Doors.
Oh. And so wait a minute, what year did that?
About 2000, I feel, somewhere around there.
Oh, I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it was a box set. So it was really beautifully done. And I don't know who curated it. I'm sure you guys had a lot to do with it, but it felt very personal. And I was struck by it because I was the guy who would buy every box set that would come out, whether it was Motown or whatever. I just love unreleased tracks, and I'm just one of those guys, collector type, right? So after I sent Ray the note, he wanted to talk to me. And so we sat on the phone for like an hour and just talked about his version of the Doors from inside. You know, he kind of gave me that insight of like the way you guys saw the band. And it was such a gift to hear him explain it because, like I said, when you're in the band, it's different. Fans decide what version of the band they want to believe in. But when you're in the band, you have your own version of the band. And I hear that especially with you guys because you have such a strong musical identity.
Too bad you didn't record that conversation, right?
It would be nice. It would be nice. He was quite nice to me as a fellow Chicagoan, you know.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the whole thing, American Prayer came out in 1978, and I think the Danny Sugarman book came out, 81, somewhere around there? No One Here Gets Out Alive is the infamous book. Somewhere in there, because I bought that book when it came out, and I read it, so imagine I'm 14 years old, and I'm reading,
You're 14 at the time?
At the time, yeah. And I read it cover to cover multiple times, and that's because of that book. That's why I started reading Kerouac and Jean-Paul Sartre and Aldous Huxley and William Burroughs. And
cool.
So that part of your history, Jim's interest in those writers, and then, of course, the musical influences, the Doors, it set me off on this kind of very particular path, which had a lot of influence on me. So thank you for that.
Well, so how old are you?
I'm like 14, 15 years old. I mean, not many kids at 14 years old are reading Kierkegaard and, you know what I mean?
Jim was.
Yeah, well, God bless, right?
Yeah.
So that's always been my personal affinity for Jim. I certainly love Jim as a singer and a frontman. I didn't ever say you guys live that way, but on video. But my real connection with him is he introduced me to something very personal.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
So somewhere in there, 78, 81, somewhere in there, now here comes, let's call it Doors 2.0, the myth, the Lizard King, you know what I mean? And you talk in your book, great book, by the way. You talk in your book very, as you are here, very plain spoken about, I know this thing's going on. It wasn't quite the Doors that I was in, but okay, you know, it's not a bad thing. People are interested in us.
Right.
Did that resurgence of interest in your work, was that surprising, or did you feel it coming? Like,
no, I mean, after we broke up, in Europe, I thought that's it. Nobody will ever care about the Doors anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a. And I was, and because of the book, Danny's book, that was, I think, an impetus to the movie.
Sure.
And the movie really is what revamped the interest in the Doors.
But you remember even...
I hate to admit it. But.
Yeah, but I guess I would say there's no shame in that game, because here I am at 14 and I'm caring about the Doors in a way that goes beyond Light My Fire and Break On Through, right? I'm suddenly...
Did you see the movie?
I did. I even got to know Val Kilmer a little bit, or somewhere around that era. I knew that, I don't know how to put it in a way that's not any more Chicago than, I knew that part of the movie was just movie making bullshit. Right. But if at the end of the day it turns a whole generation on to want to listen to how great you guys were, I don't see that as...
Exactly.
Because you guys are a great band. You're one of the only bands I could say where I can listen every record, and every record really has something for me as a fan. And I'm not talking about a couple songs. Like, I like every record. Huh. I do, honestly.
Wow. Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Huge influence on my work. So in many ways, obviously not just the literature, just the sense that a band can create a mystique that's very personal. If I would point to anything that you guys had a huge influence on me, it's like, you can build your own world. And the Doors did that, because the Doors sound like the Doors. It's like, and if you try to cover Doors songs, and I've covered Doors songs, you can't quite get the same vibe. It's like the spooky mystery, little bit Kurt Weill, and mixed with Chicago blues.
There's so many Doors cover bands,
Sure.
And yeah, you're right. None of them really.
Yeah, because it's the way your musical language is so particular. And if we were to design the Doors on paper, you'd say there's no way this band's going to sell any records.
You did some Doors songs?
You're jumping to my ending, but we'll get there. So, okay, here's Robby Krieger in 1982 or whatever. The Doors mythology starts to take off. You know what I mean? Obviously things start to change. Right. Now, I think it was John who talks in his book, maybe I could be wrong because I've read all your books, but this idea that Ray starts to really lean into Jim the Shaman. And there was that great, I don't know if you ever saw it, there was a great Onion headline once where it said, Ray Manzarek goes for 5 minutes without calling Jim a shaman. You ever see that? It's hysterical. And they had fake quotes from Ray saying, I just forgot to call him a shaman for a couple minutes. But I remember listening to Ray doing interviews in the 80s, and he was like, Jim's a shaman and a mystic, and I didn't even know what a shaman was, But I'm saying, and you talk about it in your book, but what was your perspective on all that? Were you kind of cool with it? Did you think it was a bit cheesy, or
I thought it was a bit cheesy, but I couldn't blame Ray, because it was his whole life, He's the one that discovered Jim. He's the one that, started the Doors, really. And he wanted to keep it going. When Jim died, it was the end of the world for him.
Yeah.
And so he was really just trying to keep it all going.
Yeah.
And I can't blame him, because, he like you say, the Doors are so different, and he wanted people to know, especially young people.
What I loved about your book is you talk about like Jim hanging out in your kitchen, talking to your parents. It's so beautiful to me, because again, that's the Jim you knew, not the Lizard King and the leather pants, but like this young guy, obviously very intelligent.
Right.
But the personal aspect of you talking about like your father's influence in helping the band, and there's something really beautiful about that.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about that a little bit? Because obviously I had the benefit of reading the book.
Well, you know, Jim didn't really have his parents in his life. I think it was because he didn't want to embarrass them, you know.
Because his dad was like an admiral or
His dad was a real
military guy.
straight up guy, and his mom was kind of weird too. But so I think he kind of, you know, I was lucky. I had the nice upbringing, you know, family type thing, without having to please my parents that much. You know, when I became interested in music, they were just happy that I was interested in anything, you know, something. Yeah. So you know, a lot of parents would have said, "Oh, that's not good. You're going to get into drugs," and
yeah,
and they were right.
But sorry, just to steer you back, because I think this is the sweetest part of the story. It's like, you know, you guys, early 20s, literally hanging out in the Krieger kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, there's no Doors, there's no Mystique, you know, or if there is a Doors, it's just another band amongst 1,000 bands out here at the time.
Right. But, you know, Jim he was, you know, I think being brought up in the South, I think he was very polite and very, you know, just that's how he was brought up.
Yeah.
And my parents really liked him a lot. And he liked hanging around my house because it was something he didn't have.
When's the first time in your mind that you saw that Jim had this other ability, or, you know what I'm saying? It's like he wasn't just another guy who could sing or something. You know what I mean? Like the first time you found yourself going, "Oh, this guy's really got an interesting gear here."
Well, it was before I met him. You know, John had gotten into the group by this time, and he would tell me about him. And
yeah.
How he came up with the name and all this stuff, and the first 6 or 8 songs that they came up with were great lyrics, you know, stuff that I never heard.
So you heard about this guy before you kind of...
Yeah. And the fact that he had a record deal with Columbia Records.
Ah.
You know,
is that where some of those early demos are from that? Like they did some kind of demo or...
Yeah, there was demo. That was before that. And that's how they got the deal at Columbia. I think.
Right.
Yeah, that was before Columbia. See, at that time, Ray was buddies with this guy, Dick Bach.
Okay.
You ever heard that name?
Doesn't ring a bell.
He had a label called World Pacific.
Okay, that was the Byrds were originally, or Chris Hillman.
Really?
Chris Hillman before the Byrds was signed to World Pacific.
Oh.
Which is how not the Byrds, different band. The Byrds end up doing all their early demos there with World Pacific.
Okay.
That's kind of so he was kind of this weird, he did Ravi Shankar, right? World Pacific?
Yeah, World Pacific did all the Indian stuff.
Yeah.
And that's, so that's why Ray loved that kind of stuff. So he became friends with Dick Bach, and so they got to record at World Pacific.
Okay.
That was the Doors demo before I was in the band. And it was pretty cool. They had this girl bass player, not Carol Kay, who claims that she did it.
Right. Well, I knew somebody who was a session bassist back in the 60s, and he would argue. He would tell me that he was still mad at Carol because Carol was taking credit for songs that he played on.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, who's that?
His name was Mark Toole, and he played with the Electric Prunes. But he ended up, after the Prunes blew up.
Because the Prunes, my buddy played with them.
Because
Billy Wolf.
Dave Hazinger, I think his name. He was a Dave Hazinger or something. He had produced some of the Stone stuff.
Right.
Well, he did one of those deals with the Prunes. He signed them out of a garage when they were 17. They weren't even old enough to sign the contract. They had to get their parents to sign off on it. But when he signed them to his production company. So at some point, he replaced all the Electric Prunes with a completely different band because they wouldn't do what he wanted to do. So by 18 or 19, he's out of a band that's already had hit songs, and his band trundles on with other people. It was some crazy situation.
Yeah.
But he went on to be a session guy. He was like kind of part of that, like the later version of the Wrecking Crew guys.
Okay.
And he would do Sinatra sessions and all this stuff. And he would get mad. He'd say, Carol's taking credit for songs I played on that were hits.
Well, for some reason, she told people that she played bass on Light My Fire, which I know she didn't because...
You were there.
It was...
and you wrote it.
It was a guy called Larry Knechtel.
Who was part of the Wrecking Crew.
Right.
Right.
Maybe she thought she did because, she...
It's not a bad thing to take credit for.
She played on a lot of stuff in those days.
So this band kind of comes together. And I'm struck because, I'm an obsessive type of person. So there's some very early clips of you guys on television, probably when the album first comes out. Jim's kind of wearing stripy pants. He doesn't quite look like Lizard King Jim yet. Right. And then there's clips from you guys like 6 months later where it's like you guys almost look like a completely different band. So I'm kind of curious about that period of time because if I see those early clips of you guys kind of look like a nerdy band from the Valley, trying to be a bit psychedelic. And 6 months later, you look like the Doors that everybody knows,
Yeah. Well, things move fast.
Yeah, well, that's what you were in this incredible environment, the Sunset Strip, and everybody's doing house shows and
yeah.
Because you guys, there was some club you were kind of a resident band at for a while, right?
Yeah, the London Fog.
Right, London Fog. How you were playing how many nights a week type thing?
Every night, pretty much.
Really?
Yeah.
And how many sets?
At least 2, maybe more.
And that's where some of the jams were born because you're just filling time and...
Yeah, exactly. And then from there we moved to the Whiskey.
Right.
And did the same thing there, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then we would go to New York and played at this club called Ondine's.
Right.
And there we would play 4 sets a night.
Was Ondine connected to the Velvet Underground world? Am I crazy about that?
Not so much. Not so much. They kind of specialized in having bands from L.A. and California come out.
You remind me of a funny memory. One night I was driving down the Sunset Strip, and we were driving past the Whiskey, and I've played there a few times, and I said to the person I was driving with, "Stop." And they said, "Why?" And I said, "I have to go in there." I just had this strong feeling. So I jumped out of the car, and the person went to park the car. The doorman recognized me, said, "Come on in." And it was a Doors tribute band, right? And I walk in, and as I walk in, the band's starting to play The End. It was the strangest thing. It was like God pushed me out of the car and said, so I got to have this weird, obviously it wasn't you guys, but they did.
When was this?
20 years ago. It was just a weird, like, get out of the car, go in the club, and the band, and the guys dressed like Jim and doing the voice, and I got as close as I would ever get to seeing you guys play like that.
That's
a funny story. We don't have to belabor the whole, because, like the Doors mythology, the 60s Sunset Strip mythology has been way overblown too.
Yeah,
but
so.
I'm curious, from a musician point of view, what were some of the bands that you liked at the time that were playing around town?
Well, I liked Love. Arthur Lee and Love.
Super talented guy.
Yeah.
And they were on Elektra too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they were on Elektra before us.
Right.
And they helped us get on Electric.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Buffalo Springfield.
Right.
We played a lot of gigs with them.
Did you ever think they would turn out to what they turned out to later? You know, I mean, they went on to have this other crazy success. Did you see it then or no? Were they just another good band?
I thought they would be big.
Mm.
Yeah. And we did a lot of stuff with the Airplane. You know, when we go to San Francisco, we'd play with them a lot. And the Dead and all those guys.
Yeah.
And who was the guy who was kind of blind?
San Francisco guy?
Yeah.
Was he a blues guy?
No, it was rock.
Okay.
But, Steppenwolf.
Oh, he was blind?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Not totally, but he
couldn't see.
Was kind of like Edgar Winter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Grace Slick talks in her book about sleeping with Jim at some point.
Really?
I don't know if you know that. She goes into a lot of detail. Let's just put it that way.
Wow, I never read that. Gotta check that out.
There's some story I heard, and you can confirm it or not, but like when you guys did Break On Through, there's like 140 takes, or is that one of those mythological concepts?
Yeah. I don't know how many takes, but it was nowhere near 140. You know, that was the first album.
Right.
And one of the first songs we did. So I'd say we'd be lucky to do 3 takes.
Okay. And this was live vocals? Or would you do an overdub vocals?
Probably overdub vocals.
But Jim would sing live when you guys would cut.
He'd sing with us. And then if it was good enough, he'd keep it.
But on later work, there's a lot of stuff where he would sing live, like L.A. Woman Times, or there was those overdubs too.
Yeah, a lot on L.A. Woman.
Yeah.
A lot of it on the third album. 5 to 1 was live vocal.
Yeah, great vocal, right?
Right.
We tried to cover that, by the way, too. But we never could quite nail it.
You have to sound like you're drunk.
I can't drink. I'm allergic to alcohol, so maybe that's the problem.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I just can't drink, and I have children, so my joke is always I wish I could drink because I have children. I have young children. That's the other part. As I said before, you guys are one of those unique bands where I can't imagine the band without one of you. There's only a few bands where it's like the Beatles come to mind, Led Zeppelin comes to mind, where it's like without one of you, I wouldn't be into the band. Mm-hmm. Like it's the communication between the 4 of you. Like Jimmy Chamberlain, the drummer for the Pumpkins, we were talking one time about John's drumming, and I think we were trying to get a certain feeling, and I said, can you get a little bit more of that Doors feeling? And he said, well, if you listen to John's hi-hat, he's always swinging the hi-hat even when he's playing in 4/4. There's almost always a little bit of a shuffle in the hi-hat. You know, so even when John's playing a straight beat, this is from Pumpkin's brain, but there's a little bit of swing in there. You know, you mostly played finger picking, right? Am I crazy? Or? Yeah.
True. Yeah, I always finger pick.
And I know you guys would use bassists on the records, but I love listening to you guys live because there's something about the rhythmic interplay between Ray's left and right hands.
Yeah, I mean, there was a number of the songs on the first and second album were just Ray playing piano bass.
Right. Would a lot of those songs be written and kind of come out of jams, or would you guys work as a 4-piece, or you guys work as a 3-piece a lot, and then Jim would come in and we'd say, we got this?
Oh, all different kinds of ways, you know, but usually, I mean, those first songs on the Doors demo, those songs were just came into Jim's mind. He could hear them, like, you know. Yeah, it was like...
Would he sing melodies and you guys would try to...
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I mean, well, I wasn't in the band yet. So,
oh, right, okay.
So that's... so we ended up redoing most of those songs.
Right.
Because, you know, I hate to say it, but when I was added, it really helped the songs.
Well, he loved your blues-ish kind of, is that myth or is that reality?
Yeah, but I mean, Ray was blues to the hill.
Sure.
You know, he grew up in Chicago and all that. I was more, I love blues, but I liked Indian music.
Yeah.
I
When I say that,
kinds of music.
It's guitar player talk, but I should have been more articulate, but the way you play blues is only your way of playing the blues. Okay. But I registered as blues, but it's like if I listen to Albert King, he plays a particular way. When you play blues, you play a very particular way. So it didn't come out of my mouth right, but it's like, that's what I mean. He loved the way you played the blues.
Yeah.
That's a better way to play it.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially slide and kind of the atmospheric type of stuff.
Yeah, slide especially.
What would be like a sneaky guitar influence of yours that we wouldn't necessarily hear? Does that make sense? Like somebody that if you said, I really like this guy is playing, but you wouldn't necessarily hear it in my playing. Every guitar player's got that sneaky influence, right?
I guess so. I mean, I liked Bloomfield a lot.
Okay. My dad saw Bloomfield play once, said blew his mind. He saw him at Aragon Ballroom in, somewhere in the 60s. Wow. Said Bloomfield came out with a little amp, put it on the chair, and he said he couldn't believe what this guy was getting out of the amp.
The Aragon Ballroom.
Yeah. I think back then it was called the Electric Playground or one of those 60s names,
Yeah. Where is that?
Aragon Ballroom?
Yeah.
It's north of Chicago. It was an old dance ballroom that turned into a rock venue. I'm not sure you guys ever played there. I remember whenever I saw you guys listed in Chicago type stuff, it was always like Universal Amphitheater. If you remember that venue, it was a total hole. But
I'm trying to remember who I saw at the Aragon Ballroom.
Here's a good one I have on my list.
Okay.
Drugs versus spirituality. I don't know what that means other than sounds good.
Well, I think, when we, in the 60s, drugs were spirituality.
Right.
That's what we used them for.
Right. So was it more of an LSD band, a weed band? You see what I mean? Like we were more of an LSD band.
Yeah. Well, by the time I got in the band, it was it was on the tail end of LSD.
Okay.
So when I was doing acid, it was before the Doors, and that's kind of how I met John. Was we had this friend we both went to the high school, West LA, and we used to get LSD like every weekend.
Is that when it was legal? Remember it was legal up until a certain point?
I guess so. Yeah, I think it was. And then we would get morning glory seeds.
Okay.
That was legal. And peyote. But
so this is all pre-Doors. Right?
Yeah, pretty much. And then, I was still doing it once in a while.
Yeah.
And I did do it with Jim a number of times for shows.
Yeah, I've had that experience as well. It's always interesting. It's like, what key am I in?
Right. I remember this one show we did in Tucson, I think, or Phoenix. And it was in this weird place. It was like that ceiling came down like that. It was a horrible sound.
Yeah.
And they had this guy that played the second act was an Elvis impersonator.
And you guys are on LSD?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was weird.
Isn't it amazing when you take LSD, like, that's when the Elvis impersonator
Right,
It's like the timing is perfect.
And then, and right around the first show we did was at Ray's dad's company party. He worked for Hughes Aircraft.
Okay.
And Ray did too much acid or something. He was wasted. He didn't know what he was doing. And
this is the first gig.
Yeah. And so that's when Ray quit acid, pretty much.
Yeah.
And Jim would still do it, and I would still do it. But it was kind of going out. I wish it would have stuck around longer, so it would have avoided liquor.
Right.
Because Jim was a drunk in high school.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and college, and he quit by using acid. And
And then it came back.
Yeah, unfortunately, acid showed him that liquor was bad. I think showed me that.
Sure.
But didn't last too long for him.
Mark Toolin, the gentleman I told you about that I was friends with from the Electric Prunes, he said at one point they did one of those like week-long tours with you, up and down the coast or something. And so, like any fanboy, I was like, what was Jim like live? You were there. Because, of course, I can only see on YouTube or something, right? And he said it was the strangest thing to him, and he was a little bit younger than you guys. And he said Jim was, he found Jim kind of strange backstage and a bit off-putting and not very friendly. But he said, like you can in a band, if you feel like the guy in the other band isn't interested in you or nice to you, you have a hard time watching their band. It's like, it's a band problem, you know what I mean? Even if you like their music, it's not like, well, that's the guy that just wouldn't say hello to me backstage, And he said he would go out and watch you guys every night. And he said somehow Jim on stage would transform almost into a completely different person. And it was shocking to him because he had trouble putting the guy backstage together with the guy that he was watching on stage. And he said even one night he took acid. And somehow there was you guys were playing like a stage and there was an understage. So him and two girls took acid and like laid on the stage and watched you guys from like this perspective. And he said it was pretty mind-blowing because he said Jim would blossom into this other performer on stage, but he couldn't put it together with the guy backstage. I mean, obviously you knew the guy, the guy who ate hamburgers, Jim, you know what I mean? But did you, and I'm not talking about the mythology, I'm talking about you as somebody in the band with your bandmate. Did you see that or did you just...
Not really, no. I mean, to me, he was the same guy on stage as he was off.
Right.
I don't know.
When Jim would get super provocative with crowds, there's some of that stuff available. I'm not saying it's a good cross section, but in my band, when I would get super provocative on stage, they would get really mad at me. In my band, we call it the art breakdown. And they would get mad when I would do the art breakdown. I would say something about the government or God or MTV or whatever, and my band would get super uncomfortable and yell at me after the show. When Jim would kind of go off in these verbal flights of fancy, not poetry, like he was obviously being provocative.
I mean, but that that didn't happen that often. I think the only time really was in Miami when he was just, I don't know what he was.
That's the famous night with the goat and the sheep. Oh, see, right on cue.
Must have been a combination of drugs or whatever that night. And he just started ranting and raving to this crowd. I've never heard him do that before.
Really?
No.
It was that was a one-off kind of experience.
It was.
Are you guys looking at each other like, what the hell is happening? Or?
I mean, we knew he was capable of stuff like that, so it didn't surprise us. But you know, when he started saying he was going to take off the pants, then that's, luckily that didn't really happen.
Yeah. But that caused you guys a ton of problems, right? I mean, honestly,
it did.
I don't want to talk about it because I find when stories are, when there's so much talk about it, it's like, what can we say that hasn't already been said? Yeah. So I'm not trying to dive into that, but it is interesting.
But in a way, it was a good thing because, you know, because of what happened there, we were put on the no hire list, you know.
Right.
And so
I'm saying, like, no promoters would hire you.
Right, exactly. So because of that, we ended up recording a lot.
Ah.
And, you know.
Is that LA Woman times or the one before?
Two before that, actually.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. In fact, all three of those last three albums.
So Soft Parade, Morrison Hotel, and LA Woman.
Right. Those were all done pretty quick because we had nothing else we could do.
Towards the end, musically, it certainly gets less kind of spooky and a little bit more bluesy. The general word on the street, maybe I've just read too much about the Doors, but it's like that Jim was really pushing more blues. Is that true, or do you guys all go there together?
That was true. He for some reason, he just really was going blues on us, you know. And we all loved the blues, so it was not a problem.
Yeah. And you had great blues songs. I mean...
Yeah, I mean...
And even some of the covers were like, they're legendary parts of your catalog, so it's not like it was a flight of fancy.
Right. I mean, we loved blues, and but we didn't want to be a blues band, especially.
What do you think you guys would have gotten into musically if it hadn't sort of trended towards the blues there at the end?
Well, I definitely think it would have gone a lot into the blues because that's where Jim wanted to go. But, you know, if you listen to those last two albums without Jim, you can tell kind of...
Okay. I have to go back and listen from that perspective. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
When a band makes a commitment to a certain path and you guys, whatever you committed to at the end, let's call it, you got more bluesy, right? If that's fair. Yeah. I'm making my own thing. I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's fascinating when great bands commit to a certain lane, they're able to create songs that somehow rise above the idiom. So LA Woman is bluesy, but somehow it's only the Doors could do that. Does it make sense what I'm after?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
There's a signature moment that's...
Yeah, I mean, every blues song we ever did was not just a blues.
That's what I'm after.
It was.
That's such a testament to your guys' ability. Because, you know, we all work in idiomatic, you know, we're doing the raga here, we're doing the blues thing here. You know, at some point you've got to rise above and write a song that's worthy of your rep, right? Otherwise you just sound like everybody else.
Sure. So. Yeah, and LA Woman album, there was probably more blues on that than any other album.
Okay, we're bringing it to the gentle ending here, and we'll get to my my Doors cover. So, 80s, here comes the mythology of the Doors, right? You know, there's a lot of energy around you guys. Was your guys' relationship good at that point, or did you have to kind of reevaluate your relationships in light of this renewed interest in the band?
Between Ray and John and I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say a little bit.
Like you guys got hot again, and then there was the Apocalypse Now, which was that incredible use of the end in the scene with the bombs going. I mean, it's like, talk about a movie immortality.
Yeah, love that.
It's beautiful. I mean,
I remember when that came out, I went to see it at the Cinerama Dome. Sat in the first row, and the first thing you hear is my guitar and with the helicopters going by.
Here's how crazy that is.
So cool.
I can remember the first time I saw that. I was in somebody's basement, and they had, I don't know, VHS or something. And they said, "Do you want to watch this movie?" And I thought, I don't really want to watch this movie. and they put it on anyway. And that scene comes on, and it's like, it's a moment frozen in my mind because it was such the perfect use of music with film. It's like Seal, like it's the ultimate music video, you know? It's almost like you guys wrote the song for the film, but it's not. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's jealousy that I'm expressing. So, okay, just real quick, we don't have to get too deep on it, but what was the relationship like in the 80s? You know, you're 20 years or so past, you know, whatever it was. I don't do math, but now you have to kind of reevaluate your relationship in light of this new information. There's suddenly a bunch of kids like me in basements want to listen to your band.
Well,
okay, here's an easy one. Who ran the business at that point? Were you collective a business, or was there one band member that was sort of more a business person?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Because somebody's got to approve the T-shirts and the, you know, the
yeah,
the new wave
well,
buttons.
we still had Bill Siddons,
Okay.
who was doing that kind of stuff. And I would say John was totally out of the doors, no interest in
Really?
anything until his book came out. he did some, you know, a lot of
Sure.
book signings, and he had his book being used for the movie.
Okay.
And in fact, he is in the movie.
Okay.
If you remember, he's in the first scene of the movie. He plays John Haney, who was the engineer when Jim was doing his poetry.
Okay.
Remember that scene?
I do remember the scene. I don't remember John.
Yeah, John was at the microphone. So, you know, other than that, John really had no interest in playing or doing anything.
Did you guys talk about getting back together, or?
No, not really. Not until 1990, I guess it was. There was a show where
VH1 Storytellers was the
1999.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the first time that we all got back together and played.
Okay. You don't remember, but you guys called me once in a studio to ask me to be involved in that.
Oh, and you didn't do it.
Well, I hope you don't get mad at me all over again. But they called me and said, you know, would you like to do this thing where the Doors are going to play the old songs and you'll be one of the singers? And I was very honored that you guys called, and I said, I would love to do it, but I want to write a new song with them. And you and John called me on the phone in the studio. I was at Village Recorder here in Los Angeles. And we had about a 20-minute conversation where I tried to convince you guys to do a new song with me. And you guys said no. So I didn't end up doing it. And I kind of regret it because I would have loved to play with you guys. But I got it in my head, as you know, pig-headed artist. I got it in my mind, I want to write a new song with you guys. I think what it was is ultimately it was an insecurity because I thought I can't do Jim better than Jim. And I didn't want to try to do that.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I thought if I could
that's
write
what
something with you guys, we could sort of make some new music
I
together.
see.
Because if you really think about it, it's how much respect I have for you guys as musicians. Because I just know you guys like, I guess what I wanted to say, and to say it to you now, is I know if I threw you guys in the deep end of the pool, you guys would deliver. Because I know how good you guys are. Because I was such a fan, I knew all of it. So, but you guys were on that trajectory. It's like there was a lot of interest. It's the movie and somebody record label and the whole thing. So it wasn't my business to get involved in. But that was my word on that thing.
So that was after the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that was a pretty good album, really.
You're happy with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to go back and listen to it.
Yeah. I mean, some of it wasn't that great, but, well, some of them were better than others.
Yeah.
Like the guy that did the end, what was his name? Marco!
We just need Marco here the whole time for reference.
Anyway,
yeah, but
that was pretty good.
As long as you felt good about the whole thing. And then you guys went to this whole period where you started touring again, right?
Ray and I did.
Travis from Days of the New.
Days of the New, remember that?
I remember the name of the band, yeah.
Yeah, he was good. We did it in 3/4. Parts did a 4.
Really?
Yeah.
I need to go and check that.
See that was.
I didn't really listen to it when it came out because I still was hurt that I didn't get to work with you guys.
Yeah.
But again, I blame that on me, not on you.
Oh well.
I know we talked briefly about you being married to your wife since 1972, but as you know, like having a partner with you through this whole journey must be an incredible thing for both of you, right? I mean, am I projecting? But it seems pretty self-evident that she was there with you through this incredible.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I think she doesn't really appreciate it, but
Which part doesn't you think she appreciates?
The parts the parts after we got married.
Well, God bless her.
I'm kidding.
God bless her. Okay, here's a place to end. So, in 1988 is when my band really started, and I was just starting to learn how to really write songs. I wrote songs, okay, but there was, and I remember it at a practice saying, I wish we could get the Doors vibe, that spooky vibe, because I didn't know how to write like that. Like when Ray would write those weird, maybe you wrote them, but those weird kind of passing chords, this kind of Kurt Weill, Bertolt Brecht. I don't know who was writing those chords. It was probably you for all I know.
Well,
but we did
songs?
Crystal Ship was the song.
Crystal Ship.
It starts like C sharp minor, before you slip into. Beautiful chords, like, almost like Bach modal. I always assumed it was Ray.
That was Ray.
Yeah, because I assume because it has a Bachish kind of thing. So I thought a nice place to end is, so literally my earliest gigs with the band, and maybe even from the first gig on, we were doing Crystal Ship.
Really?
Yeah. Because it captured something that I wanted for my band that I didn't know how to do. So bringing you guys into it was a way of me saying, I want to understand what this is because it's so beautiful to me when I listen. It's so evocative. So I wanted to stop here because it's really a tribute to you guys.
So you tried to write a song like Crystal Ship?
I think I've tried to write 20 songs like Crystal Ship.
Which one came closest?
That's a good question. I'd have to think about that. But we certainly did a lot of stuff that was sort of modal because of the end. This idea of kind of jamming in open D-ish. But in our case, we blow them through Marshalls at full volume. Right. And that was part of what we learned how to do. Yeah. So there's a lot of Doors in the Pumpkins DNA. But I wanted to stop here because it struck me because obviously I knew we were going to talk about Jim and this whole journey you're on. And I think it's such a beautiful thing because you think about, like even when you said when you heard that Jim was gone, you weren't even sure he was really gone. And of course, we've heard the 8,000 rumors and, the National Enquirer version. Right. And, in our generation, we lost, of course, many people, Kurt Cobain being among them, that what they horribly call the 27 Club, where it's like, for some reason, 27 seems to be the age, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. But, there's something about certain artists, they burn so bright, that when they're gone, you still spend a lot of time sort of trying to figure out what they were really saying or what they meant. And I'm sure you've had those moments where you kind of realized that there were things there that you didn't see at the time and you were standing right there.
Right, yeah.
So I thought it would be interesting because I, literally from the first gigs of my band, I was singing these lyrics. So I think it's a nice way to bring our conversation. Before you slip into unconsciousness, I'd like to have another kiss, another flashing chance at bliss, another kiss, another kiss. The days are bright and filled with pain, enclose me in your gentle rain. The time you ran was too insane. We'll meet again, we'll meet again. So I think the beautiful thing is in loss, whether it's family or generational, in your case, your bandmate, that once we get sort of far enough from the pain, we can really, really appreciate like what they left us. And so in that case, I do appreciate him.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thanks, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Robbie. Appreciate it.